Good morning. This is Kathy Beatty with Divorce Support Anonymous. I wanted to bring you some more information. I know there have been several topics that have been sent to me that people would like to have covered. So, as I have done in the past, I wanted to bring in an expert to really give us more depth of knowledge. So, joining me today is Katie Zuverink, who is the clinical director of Lifeology Institute in Grand Rapids. So welcome, Katie.
Thanks so much, Kathy.
I'm really glad to have you here because this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart and many hearts of those parents who are going through divorce and raising teenagers at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's never an easy time to go through this. So talk to us first, Katie, about, I want to begin with, let's go back to realizing what it is to be a teenager once again.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So much pressure and so much stress. So we see a lot of teenagers in our office. Primarily we see kids and families in transition. And so this is something that we spend a lot of time with, or we are really comfortable with. So probably the biggest thing that is easy to forget about being a teenager is that teenagers are going through a developmental stage that is specifically about figuring out who they're going to be and what their role is going to be in society, what kind of person they're going to be, what kinds of groups they're going to be included in, what kinds of people they're attracted to. And so they're trying to springboard from this firm family unit into who am I going to be as an individual? And that is so difficult and really scary. And so then when we add in the dynamic of divorce, which sometimes is necessary during this stage, then it just adds a whole nother layer, which makes it a little bit more complicated and a little bit more confusing.
Yes. And that's what I wanted to ask you about. As we bring in the pain of the divorce to these teenagers, what are they experiencing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think, it really depends on the teenager and it depends on the family. But lots of what we see is that teenagers who are in the midst of a family divorce, it really sort of rocks their foundation and their identity that they're starting to build. Because if, again, we think of the family unit as this foundational piece from which they springboard, and the foundational piece is sort of pulling apart, it's like, well, where do I push off from? And that can be really confusing for them. It sort of shifts their reality, and that's not necessarily a problem. So a lot of people assume that, a divorce is just going to be devastating for a teenager or for a child. And that's not always the case. It will be stressful, just like it is stressful for the parents. It will be stressful, but it doesn't have to be awful devastating. It's something that we can work through. That splitting of the family unit feels fairly chaotic. And brings this sense of not feeling like they know what's coming next. So things feel unsure. It's like, where am I going to live? Where are my things going to be? What will my schedule be like? Who's going to take me to school? Will I ride the bus home? Are we still going to be able to afford this house? Are you going to move to the other side of the state? Am I never going to see you again? So all of that creates a ton of anxiety. And so sometimes that comes out as anxiety, and sometimes that comes out as anger, and sometimes that comes out as withdrawing. And so it really depends on the kiddo and the family. Does that sort of answer?
It does beautifully. But how can we help them through that? Because they're questioning all the basics.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how do we help them through this?
Such a good question. So it doesn't have to be wildly complicated, which is the good news.
Yeah.
Teens are super resilient. And so if we go in knowing that they are very resilient and they will make it through this just like we will as the adults, and we sort of communicate that sense of like, we've got this, it's okay. So I would say what's really important and really hard to do with all teenagers is to keep lines of communication open. Because again, like I said in the beginning, they're trying to figure out what their identity is going to be. And so often they're already pulling away from the family a little bit, which is why they don't want to talk to you, which is why they spend a ton of time on their phone and on social media, because they're trying to get in with a group, because developmentally, that's what they're supposed to be doing. So because they are pulling back anyway, it's sort of difficult to figure out what the line is in your family for what open communication looks like. So some really easy tips about how to do that. So you can ask them how they're feeling about it. So, and you can start that with modeling, hey, Susie, I've been having sort of a rough time with this whole divorce stuff. How have you been feeling about it? I imagine this is hard for you too.
And Katie, what if they say, I'm good, I'm fine?
Yes, perfect. So then you say, okay, yep, sure, I understand. If you change your mind and you want to talk about it, I'm here for you. And so I love that you asked, because often that's how they're going to start. No, I don't want to talk about it, or no, I'm fine. Because it's uncomfortable to talk about it.
Right. Yeah. For my teenage son, as I was going through divorce, I asked him, so who are you talking to? I just need to know that you're talking to someone. Yeah,
that's a great idea. And hopefully it's someone who's helpful.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. No, but I love that you asked that, because it's important that we don't try to force them to communicate, because then they'll just feel resentful and controlled, and they're trying so hard to sort of back away from that stuff. And so just, I'm here when you're ready, buddy.
Yeah. I love that. So what does it do to the teenager if I bash their father, or a mother or a father bashes or talks negatively about the other parent?
Man, Kathy, this is so hard. Because the parent is grieving, and they are feeling so many things, angry and lonely and sad and hurt and rejected. And it can be really difficult to think outside of that, or to feel anything outside of that. And so we sort of lose perspective on who it's appropriate to have those conversations with. So specifically to your question about what happens when we bash the other parent or talk negatively about the other parent. So your kids align with, so if you have one child, they align with some with mom and some with dad, and they see themselves some in mom and some in dad, right? Or some in this partner, some in this partner. And so if this partner says, well, this one's ridiculous, won't pay child support, and such a jerk, such an idiot, then the part of the child that aligns with this parent feels attacked and really, really hurt. And so, and I think a lot of parents don't know that, especially as they're going through a divorce. They think like, oh, my kid gets it. They know I'm not talking about them. But almost every single time the teenager comes in and says, it feels like she's attacking me, or he's attacking me.
Oh, that is so important that you say that, Katie. So important for parents to realize that they don't have that objectivity.
Yeah, they really don't, and they can't yet developmentally, and it's not their fault, and that's okay. They'll be able to do it later in life, but it's just they're not able to pull away in a way that like a friend could, or a counselor, or a pastor, or somebody else that you could have those conversations with.
Right. So many times I see parents who give too many details. And they want their teenager to be their counselor. So help us through that and how that is harmful.
Yeah. And I could totally see that. That is such a, and we do see that. And I also have have a lot of empathy for parents who are in the middle of that transition and needing someone to talk to and needing someone to help hold you up. And those are very real needs, and you need to get them met. Your teenager cannot do that for you. So that, again, developmentally, they do not have the capacity to support you through that, and it will be too much pressure. And so they may try, and they may put themselves in that role for you. That doesn't mean they're ready, and it doesn't mean that they can handle it. So it's your job as a parent to back out and say, I know you want to make sure I'm okay, but this is, I'm in charge of me making sure that I'm okay. So if we speak specifically to details, sharing too many details. So, teenagers are really smart, and they're quick, and they're observant. And so they're going to know sort of what's going on, or at least they're going to feel the tension, and they're going to feel the stress around certain things, often money, often custody stuff, child support, alimony payments, and if there has been like an extramarital affair, or if someone is dating again, or any of those things, they feel that, and they might not be able to put their finger on it, but they certainly are aware. So as far as sharing with them, keep it general. Okay, so this can be really simple. So for example, if we're talking about money, and it's like, we have to shift our lifestyle. So if when we were married, we were going to dinner 3 nights a week, and now we probably are going to go 1, then the conversation should be something like, you know what, for a few months or maybe for a few years, it's going to be a little bit tighter. So we're going to have to probably plan on dinner home most nights, but we'll get through it. And it's just going to be a shift. That's appropriate. What is not appropriate is saying something like, well, if your dad would pay his child support, or if your mom would pay her child support, then we could go to dinner like we normally do. And so take out the details, because they cannot handle them. It's too much pressure, and they get hurt. They get hurt trying to carry that stuff around. If there have been like some extramarital romantic stuff going on, or they're already, one of the parents is already dating, it's important that the parent who engaged in that activity, or who is engaging in that activity, is able to have a conversation about that if the kids already have some concept that that is going on. Okay, so if kids have no idea and parents come in and say, well, I know you're wondering about why we are getting a divorce, and it's because I fell in love with this other person in the middle of our marriage. And so, but that is not going to be super helpful.
No.
What is more helpful is if the kids already have some sense of that something like that went on, to open that up and say, guys, I know that this is really confusing. What questions do you have? And then to keep your answers very general. And that stuff is so sticky and so difficult to talk through. That's one of those areas that I really would reach out to maybe a counselor, maybe a pastor, maybe, a support person that can help you discern for your kids specifically what's appropriate to share.
Thank you for that. And let me just emphasize again, first of all, when you're going through a divorce, it is not the time for you to be getting into the next relationship, because you have so much healing that you need to be doing. And to bring your children into another relationship is so devastating for them. So great words, really great words. And those details, I love what you said, Katie, because I've had so many people that have shared very intimate details about the divorce with their teenagers. And it's like, they can't handle this. They're struggling as it is. So thank you for those great words. Why is it so important that we have our own counselor going through divorce so that we don't dump on our kids? And you touched on this, but I'd like a little more detail of why you as the parent need that support group, need that therapist, need to have your own counselor.
Yeah, right. So I feel really passionately about this because in the midst of divorce or, any other really emotionally charged shift in your life while you are parenting, you are feeling so many things, and there's really no way for you to be able to pull that all apart by yourself, because the feelings, so there's some science behind this. So when you are really activated emotionally, then you start functioning out of what we call the back brain. So way back here that handles emotional memories, it handles, blood pressure, heart rate, breathing speed, all of those things. And you cannot also function out of the front of your brain at the same time. This is where we do problem solving, critical thinking, executive functioning stuff. So you can't function from both places at the same time. So when you are way back here, functioning from here, you can't make good choices about what do I share with my kids. I'm feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and sad, so sad, and it's making me angry and irritated. You're not gonna be able to do all that because you're all caught up in your feelings and in your body, and that's really normal. And so there's nothing wrong with that. We just all need a little bit of extra help when that stuff is going on, so that we don't put too much of the burden and weight on the people whose job it is not to support us, but to be supported by us. Does that sort of answer that question, Kathy?
Yes, it does. It's very helpful. And many people are leery of getting into a counseling session or a support group because they don't know what they're going to share or be able to share, how safe it's going to be. But you do have to try it. There's you have to. It's so beneficial. And what I tell my folks, if you don't deal with it now, it's going to bite you physically later.
Oh my goodness. That's so true.
Yeah. And now is the time to deal with it. And some people have never been to a therapist before or a support group before.
Right.
Now is that time. And I've had so many people who come into my groups who have never been part of, but realizing they are desperate for help.
Yeah.
And there is help. There is help available.
Oh, yeah.
And Katie, let me go back to the teenagers as far as when do we know as parents that it would be beneficial for our teens to go to a counselor?
So, being a counselor for teenagers and parents, I generally think it's a good idea, just in life. But I think specifically there are some times where you really, really need to consider it strongly. And so some of those times are if the child is starting to withdraw in a way that is concerning for you, if there are sudden problems in school, a drop in grades that's unexpected, inappropriate sexual behavior. So this is like sexting. This is like overly provocative dressing, any drug or alcohol use. If they start pulling back out of social activities that they used to like, if they stop doing things that they used to enjoy, if they suddenly have a change in friendship choices, if they have poor body image, some self-hatred stuff going on, any self-harm, any thoughts about wanting to die, and obviously any like criminal type behavior. So this could be like shoplifting or hurting animals, things like that. So it kind of runs the gamut, of course, but I think once you start seeing some concerning changes is when it's time to come talk to somebody, and decide if it's time to bring them in. You can always do a consultation, and most therapists are happy to have you come in and do a consultation, give you some ideas, and at least try those. And then if that doesn't work, bring them in to see a therapist. And something that I also wanted to touch on, Kathy, which I don't think that I said before, was that group support can be so unbelievably helpful for parents because you can hear that all the other parents and all the other people going through a divorce are experiencing the same thing, and you're not alone, and it can be so powerful. And so I am just a really big proponent of that. And so I just love the work that you're doing, and I think it makes just a huge difference. So I also wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Katie, for mentioning that. I agree. It is so powerful when you hear someone articulate your pain.
Yes.
That you haven't been able to find the words for. It's so normalizing. It's so helpful and definitely powerful. Let me speak to, or ask you to speak to. So if I am a woman raising teenage sons, or if I am a man raising teenage daughters, give us some, and I know it's a very broad topic, but give us some specific helps that we can manage this with.
So I think play to your strengths. So if you know that you're a good listener, then play to that strength, which means, open up conversation and allow it to happen and just be supportive. I think I think really often parents go into a discussion with teenagers thinking, I'm going to tell them all the things they need to know about how to handle this exact situation. And the thing is that that's really not what they need, and it's not what they want. And so what they want is for you to hear them. And so if I am a single mother raising teenage boys and they're having a hard time with dating or figuring out how to be appropriate about my sexuality or, any of those things, then mom can say, hey buddy, it seems like this has kind of got you down, or, maybe you might have some questions about this, or you might just want to talk. So I just want to let you know I'm here if you need anything. So much like we said before, open it up and then allow them to come back later once they've had a minute to process and prepare. And then listen. So you just listen and be kind, and you can do lots of, man, that really does sound hard. What do you think you might do about that? Because then you can communicate like, I'm with you, I'm supporting you, but I also trust you to be able to figure this out. And so I think there's a lot of pressure to know the answer to all the questions. And you're not ever going to be able to, not ever. And so don't pretend, just, oh yeah, that one is tough. Yeah, buddy. Wow.
I love that, because as parents, we do feel like we have to be teaching all of the time. We have to be instructing and forming. But the value of it's so honoring to them. If you sit back and sit beside them at their bed, and just let them talk.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And lots of the feedback that we get from the teenagers is when we start to build parents up to do that, to like stop feeling like you have to answer the questions, solve all the problems, just be with them. The kids feel so connected and so heard and really valued and respected. And that's a big deal for them.
Yes, that is. Thank you so much for your valuable information. Now, Katie, if you would just explain and tell us about Lifeology, where you're located, the services that you provide to the Grand Rapids community.
Yeah, sure. So we are a group counseling practice, and everybody here specializes in something different. And so I see a very specific group of people. I most often work with parents of kids who are having a hard time. And I love the parenting. It's my favorite thing to do. We have someone who specifically works with children who have been through trauma. We have someone who specifically works with couples. We have someone who specifically works on gender issues. We have someone who does addiction and trauma with adults. And so every week we shut down the practice for 3 hours, and all of the therapists are required to be in the same room together, collaborating about cases. So that if my parents that I'm working with also are struggling with addiction, then I can collaborate with our addiction specialists and get some ideas about how to be most helpful. So that way, really, for the price of one therapist, you're getting seven experts and people who are really specialized. And so we try to make coming into counseling, super approachable. It's most of our stuff that we put out is funny because going to counseling is really difficult. And so our belief is that when you get here, you should be able to go get a cup of coffee and a snack and sit in a comfortable waiting room that has good music and it smells good and the people are friendly and that you don't get that everywhere. And so we're really passionate about having that environment here.
And I have been in your facility, and it is very welcoming, very warm, very comfortable.
Oh, good. I'm so glad.
Yes. Thank you very much for your sharing of information. This is going to be so helpful for parents with teenagers as they go through divorce. I'm just really excited about putting this out there and letting this knowledge be known. So thank you, Katie Zuverink, for your work in helping people.
Well, thanks so much, Kathy. This has really, truly been a blast. This is, I love talking about this stuff. So any chance I get.
Hey, we will do another one soon, I hope.
Yes, I hope so too.
Yeah. This is Kathy Beatty with Divorce Support Anonymous. Thank you for tuning in, and feel free to connect with me if you need connection over to Lifeology or contact them directly. Thanks for joining us today.